All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host today, Samantha Studebaker Carl, and I'm here with my good friends Catherine and Kenji and Lori and Dan. And today we are continuing our discussion of, I'll hold it really still, Sacred Contracts by Carolyn Myss. We're in chapter 5. We are on page 158. And in this chapter, we've been really kind of trying to identify our archetypal patterns. And we've been interviewing, if you will, the archetypes that we feel like we connect with the most. So this particular section here on page 158 is One Student's Choices. That's where the section is titled, and it looks like this is going to be a story of one of the people that Carolyn's worked with on helping identify their archetypal pattern. So, but before we get going with that, I'm going to give my friends an opportunity to jump out and introduce themselves, and then Catherine, you can take it with the reading.
Lori Emmons in Denver.
And Sissick in Las Vegas.
Kenji, Coral, Maine.
Hey, when I pulled up my Kindle on my phone and then I laid it down somehow, I don't know what I did, but my phone is restarting, so I can't read yet. If you want to start reading, you can, or we can wait for my phone.
It's always something, isn't it?
Right.
Review a little bit last week just to lead into this week. A little more.
Yeah,
like,
we could do that a little bit. Last week, she asked us a lot of questions, or she told us to ask the archetypes a lot of different types of questions, and some of them were like questions about your history. Some of them are personal questions, some were spiritual questions, and some were just kind of intuitive questions. So there was a whole bunch of them. We kind of dove in a little bit into the child archetype, and we were talking about the magical child. That was the one that we were kind of hoping to dig into a little bit more, and I feel like there was one other
nature
one,
nature
the nature one, and
magical.
right. So we all kind of expressed how we asked those questions to those archetypes of ourselves. All right, One Student's Choices. And we are again on page 158 in Sacred Contracts by Carolyn Myss. All right, Brian's story shows one way of selecting archetypes. I hope it gives you a sense of what the selection process feels like. Brian had an immediate connection to the author, the hermit, and the scholar, and the scribe, among others. The author was an obvious choice for him because of his academic background and his occupation as a writer. Upon meeting Brian, for instance, what is almost immediately evident is that he relies on the mental plane for his work. Brian also related strongly to the hermit archetype, recognizing that his emotional well-being and creativity were dependent on his being able to have a solitary life. Here again, much of his physical life had been designed consistently around the demands of his hermit. What made the hermit an intimate archetype for him was that it is a constant characteristic rather than one that comes into play every now and then. A good rule in general when considering your archetypes is that they must represent characteristics that are continually at work in several areas of your life. The scholar one was a good one for Brian because as an author of nonfiction books, much of his work requires assiduous solitary research, something he quite enjoys. Brian eventually determined that the scribe was less significant to him than the author and the scholar archetypes because scribes traditionally did not create books, they copied manuscripts. After taking time to think through the differences that characterize these two archetypes, he ruled out the scribe. You will need to give the same kind of attention to your choices because many archetypes will initially seem to have an intimate connection with you. Upon careful scrutiny, however, you will be able to identify the fine lines of distinction that completely reshape your archetypal wheel. Brian added the judge to his initial group for two reasons. Like his father, he was a strong critical streak, which in its negative aspect manifests as constant criticism of those around him for what are often minor flaws or lapses. But in his constructive aspect, the judge serves him well in his profession. He began his writing career as a critic, and his critical eye has allowed him to supplement his writing income with occasional editorial jobs. The significant aspect of this choice was that Brian chose the judge based on his recognition of its shadow qualities in him. He was able to admit to himself that he has a highly judgmental nature and that his aspect of himself contributes to a great deal of growth challenges that he has to confront in his spiritual and personal lives. Although it seemed counterintuitive at first, Brian also chose both the monk and the hedonist as archetypes. He spends a lot of time exploring and practicing spiritual paths, but he also loves a good food and wine. He admitted to being puzzled at the apparent contradiction himself, but on reflection, he recalled that in the Middle Ages, the Christian monks planted and cultivated many of the first vineyards of Europe. And so the connection may be paradoxical, but never incongruous or unprecedented. The monk represents, for example, a spiritual lifestyle of discipline and self-reflection that is essential to how Brian supports his inner life. Spiritual knowledge and his tools for inner growth provide the nurturing that his monk and hermit require for balance. And these balanced aspects of his psyche, in turn, serve to maintain the work of his author. Together, these archetypes form a team, which is their nature. Brian also recognized the teacher in himself, not simply because he occasionally gives writing courses, but because because in his own work, he is also seeking to teach his readers. From another perspective, he is also welcoming new teachers into his life as part of his work. The old job offer cliche of learn while you earn never seemed more appropriate. Brian's most interesting choice was his 12th archetype, the rebel. Because of his problematic relationship with his father, a strict disciplinarian, Brian developed a tendency to go against established authority, not only in the political arena, where he was active in the civil rights and anti-war movement of the 1960s, but also in his work. Moreover, his rebel aspect is precisely what so richly supports his author and his monk, because he seeks to challenge conventional thought and forge new paths of insights and spiritual interpretation for others. In his early years, his rebel emerged through its angry and defensive aspects and led him into prolonged experimentation with drugs and alternate lifestyle. But he quelled this anger. But as he quelled this anger, his rebel became more of a support in his life, assisting his psyche and seeing and contributing to life as it could be, as opposed to destroying what is. After he selected his 8 individual archetypes, Brian began to see that his contract had to do in large measure with helping other people with their own writing on many different but interconnected levels. For years, he had believed that he was intended to be a writer and produce significant works on his own. Over time, however, he came to appreciate the various roles he played, not only as an original author, but also as an editor, collaborator, teacher, and facilitator, even helping other authors and would-be authors find the appropriate agent or publisher for their own works, all of which deal in some form with the evolution of spiritual awareness. This last insight required a certain degree of humility. Writers, like most artists, need a large degree of healthy egotism just to survive in a competitive and often unfriendly marketplace. As a creative person, you have to believe in yourself even when your work is rejected or receives harsh criticism. But Brian also needed to let go of his attachment to having all his projects advance his own name or professional reputation in some linear way. Once he was able to do that, he realized that the richness and diversity of his vocation was not a sign of having failed at being a great author, but actually represented a contract of far more significant, if less grandiose proportions. In an insight that surprised him, Brian realized that the religious artists of the Middle Ages often worked in relative anonymity to produce great art, literature, and music. Individual aggrandizement was considered less important than contributing to the growth of knowledge, wisdom, and spiritual power in the larger world. Although such an attitude may seem impractical, if not counterproductive, in today's world, in the end, if not counterproductive in today's world, in the end, Brian found that it suited his nature and his archetypal support group extremely well. The fact that you do not have a primary connection to a particular archetypal pattern does not preclude your being able to enjoy the world associated with that archetype. You don't have to have the artist or musician in your support group to love and enjoy art and music. But attempting to align yourself to an archetype that is not one of your 12 companions can sometimes cause psychological and emotional trauma, because incidents of personal rejection result, all due to trying to become something you're not meant to be. 2 classmates of mine from college were both in the music department. One was a natural musician and the other was merely a music major. During their final performance of senior year, the musician closed her eyes when she played, and we could all see the spirit of music being expressed through her. By contrast, the music major played with her eyes open, conscious of every note. Although her performance was technically correct, it lacked the feeling and confidence so evident in the musician. When you are acting outside of the guiding field of your 12 companions, you lack the magnetic force field to pull together the opportunities or relationships you desire. The same imbalances occur when you attempt to initiate agreements with certain people or succeed at a particular occupation, but lack the archetypal template. As I listen to people describe the difficult times they are having professionally, I realize that many of them are pursuing a life they were not meant to live, and all the workshops in the world, all the education they can attain, cannot bring about the success they are seeking. Either you have good investment instincts or you don't. On-target stock market sense comes from the gut of someone who has an archetype associated with financial risk-taking, such as the gambler or the Midas. And while those 2 archetypes by no means guarantee financial success, they certainly generate more financial opportunities than other archetypes. How do you know if you are simply not trying hard enough to realize your skills or contract? Perhaps the time just isn't right for your tree to bear fruit, even though you might indeed be standing under the right one. Perhaps you are working the wrong aspect of the musician archetype, for instance. Maybe you are meant to work in the production side of the industry or as a musician's agent instead of actually being a performer. How do you know that you are not just bailing out when you should be hanging in there? It's an easy answer, and it's a hard one. All clarity about the self is dependent on your self-esteem, your knowledge of yourself. A strong sense of self can sense when it's going in the right direction and when it's knocking on the wrong door. When you know yourself, you know exactly when you are not being true to yourself. Your gut instincts alone provide you with all the guidance you need. Your intuition will help you find your archetypes and your path in life. When deciding on which archetypes belong in your support group, trust those instincts above all else. You'll need to practice your critical powers of discrimination, of course, weighing factors in favor of or against including a particular archetype. But in the end, you should listen to your inner voice. All else being equal, the deciding factor between 2 archetypes that stack up about the same in logical terms will be the ones that your gut tells you plays a role in your life. Okay, that's the end of chapter 5.
That was a mouthful.
That makes me think I need to read out loud more often so I can exercise my voice, exercise my tongue twisters.
You did great.
Thank you.
I I like the part there towards the end where she was talking about the gut and the hunch feeling or the intuition. I think a lot of times when it comes to our inner selves or like that inner child or those things, as we get older, I think we tend to kind of squash that intuition part of it because we don't want to necessarily delve back into that realm or deal with it because we have so many other things I think sometimes going on. But that may be the very thing that might help us really in with everything else that we're dealing with right now. And maybe that inner child or that innocent child or that uh some of these other archetypes are what we need to really look at. You know, I believe God gave us these different aspects of ourselves in order to help us navigate life, but a lot of times we just plow ahead and we kind of just think, oh, well, I'll just barge through or I've got it all under control. And then, but after we kind of go through it, we have that gut feeling and we go, oh, maybe I should have listened to my gut feeling back then, and maybe this would have turned out differently.
Always listen to your gut, I say. Otherwise, it comes back and bites you in the butt.
No, I agree, but I also think that um, we can kind of get out of alignment with or our guts can feeling can kind of get out of alignment, or we, get mired up or um, become sort of inaccurate mm, um, from the experiences that we have over time. And so I think, yeah, if you have
That's fear, though. That's a whole different thing. There's a difference between fear and like a gut
yeah,
intuition.
yeah. And I guess it can be fear, it can be a number of mixed emotions um, that sort of turn to become representative of your kind of gut instinct. And we can kind of get confused on that a bit, I'm thinking.
Well,
However, but yeah, generally you're right, I believe.
no, sorry, Jason, go ahead and finish. I was gonna
I'm
throw in.
finished.
Oh, I think I see what you're getting at, and how you can say sometimes maybe we let a certain, not one of our more predominant archetypes or aspects, um, that we lean on, but we let another one kind of build itself up maybe, and it kind of takes over, and we're not centered or calibrated maybe, and so therefore we start relying on it more and thinking or we're maybe hoping or wishing that if I just continue down this, things will, work out when deep down, I really need to switch or I need to get back to the the bear me, I guess. I'm for me in my head thinking the bear me or that um going back to maybe going back to that innocent child or that nature child or um
The
the
brave child.
yeah or something like that or one of the more core archetypes and kind of restart and kind of get back to center. I'm not sure if I'm saying what I'm trying to get at in the right way, but
Yeah.
I think I get what you're getting at. We can kind of get off track thinking we're going down the right track.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, the same way you can be kind of walking through the forest and come upon a clearing where you have these great vistas, you can also be walking through and gradually end up into a deep dark forest and not realize it till you finally do. And and then of course then the sun's coming down and you're lost and eyes start popping up around the trees and or is that just me? Or I mean, that's cartoons, right? That's in cartoons.
But it's a great analogy the way you said that, because I think
Oh,
that's kind of played out for a lot of people. I mean, how do I say this? Look at a lot of people that kind of start going down that dark hole, and they just kind of keep going, and they don't know where to go, and then they kind of just stop where they're at, but they're stuck, and they don't know which way to go to climb back out either
uh-huh.
sometimes.
Yeah. I, it seemed like the person she was choosing to discuss the archetypes they chose was very, gosh, they were really distinctive in the reasons, and they must have put a lot of effort into figuring out their archetypes and choosing the ones they wanted to focus on. Must have took years. Hmm. No, but
Or maybe
so
they
is
just read through the definitions and chose which one connected to them. I mean,
yeah, maybe.
it doesn't, I don't think you have to study these for years, although it's obvious that some people have. Especially Carolyn, whatever, because she's written a lot of books on it. But just for regular people, I think we just have to see which one resonates with us.
Yeah.
I'm
And
definitely a regular people. And the 4 core ones that she said we all have definitely resonated with me. And then recognizing the other aspects that maybe are controlling my life more than I think.
yeah, it's almost like the way I can my logical the way I'm analyzing it, more almost like I don't want to say like a program, but our 4 main archetypes that we associate with or whatever seem like the basic uh
Foundation.
yeah, foundation or I was thinking like a computer program, so to speak, that that we kind of revert back to whenever we get to aspects of our lives that we're struggling with or something, and then we go from there, and then we maybe from there, the other archetypes that are more prevalent with us, maybe they are what come and help as we sift through. I mean, I think this kind of goes in a lot with what all the things that we talked about in other books of how we think, how we talk, how we, you know, feel, and to me, it goes back for me, all the things that are attributes of how I was created when I was, when I was born.
Like a
How
car
are
where
you?
you get like these. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut off whoever that was. But it reminds me of a car. Like it comes with standard things that everybody has on their car, and then some people you can upgrade to leather seats or whatever, electric windows. I guess all windows are electric these days, but
Seat warmers. Those are nice upgrades. Warm your bum.
Definitely need that feature.
I love that feature when I've ridden in some cars. It's like, oh yeah, let me turn that up.
But yeah, you were saying there, Catherine, upgrades.
yeah, just different upgrades that some people have in their cars and other people don't. I just thought that's what I thought of when I was listening to Dan talking.
Hmm.
And on the other hand, it can also feel more like a multiple personality type. Who's in charge today?
Or I think in some cases we can also strip down to basics where we're just basically functioning just on a very basic level.
I have the heater and keys.
You get down to the Fred Flintstone car. Where the roof was an option, was an upgrade.
But it's interesting how it's kind of hard to look and, because I think we all were doing, when we were looking at, what archetype we resonated with, and it seemed like we all had that one or two that we really resonated with, and now trying to, it makes me wonder, when she was doing some of this research and going through how she bore these out and figured out some of these other, because I think we all have similar ones, but I think again going back to we're all innately different to lots of degrees, that I think that's why it's hard for us to in some cases sit here and go, well, it's this or it's that, or because it's each one of us is different, and so how we really act and go through our lives and what core aspects of it going into what we believe and how we look at life, I think that also plays a big part of it too. And but I think that's why we all can go right back to that innocent child or that magical child or whatever, because that's the core basic, you know, where we first felt the joys of family love, but we also felt the first hurts and pains of family and love and all that. And that's where our deepest pains, I think, originally came out of. And then through life, aspects going through life, and some of these archetypes have been born out of what we've gone through in life too, and how it pushes or draws us back in how we respond and act with life too.
I keep wondering if there is a tarot deck of archetypes that we can get a hold of and work with.
There probably is. I haven't looked for one, but I bet you there is.
Oh, that mixes some interesting, two interesting concepts there, I think. Wow. Hmm. So Dan, what you are what you were saying in your last statement, was that kind of, were you kind of saying that we should maybe visit our inner child to then select our best is there a certain time of life that we should revisit? Do you think that we should go from there to select our best archetypes?
I really don't know, because
I mean, is that what you were saying, or was it something different?
I think that what I was trying to get at is that I think I'm going from my own how I look at things and how I believe things, and I honestly believe God created us with certain inherent aspects, things that are within us that are who make us us. And so maybe these archetypes, and then there's general ones that she's found throughout most people. Maybe I said a little bit of this last week. The generalities that most of us have, or that have been borne out through all her studies. But I think there's aspects also that are kind of unique to each and every one of us too, because we are all different in how we really perceive, look at things and stuff. We can have similar ideas, similar views, similar thoughts, but how we really internalize it or how we deal with it, I think we all have little aspects that are a little bit different compared to how somebody else acts. I'll go back to when we talked about through other books how, at an accident, you can get a bunch of different perspectives on things that people saw from the accident. You might get some general correlations, but everybody's gonna, and I think that's kind of how we are with our lives. We're all very uniquely different in how we look, perceive, process, deal with, and I think that's that part of where these archetypes that I think she's talking about kind of come into play. And then from there, and I think some of them are inherent and some of them are kind of born out or brought out as we go through life, and how they suit us and help us deal and go through life, I guess maybe is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that
think-
makes sense.
I think at different stages of our lives, we would have completely different ones. Just kind of depends on what we're going through at the time.
And how many other individuals can affect your being, your experience?
Is that a challenge?
What did you say, Jason?
Is that a chat? Is that the challenge? Is that are you? No,
Could
I'm
be.
kidding, but I'm kidding. Yeah, but that's a great another great point, and that's kind of what I was getting at, and was sort of also bringing up in regards to what Dan was saying and Catherine was saying that you know that exact point where you know we can be influenced. I mean, how easily is it for us as humans to be completely manipulated and influenced? Um, and we may be, you know, for instance, we could be being manipulated for quite a long time, not realize it, but just but start thinking that we make certain decisions because we're resonate with a certain archetype when it's actually something or someone manipulating us. I mean, if it's in a positive route, then you know, I guess it's got a positive effect. But you know, if it's throwing us off, and you know, or if it's anything else, I mean, it's probably not good. So, but we are very vulnerable as humans, and maybe not so much as spirits, you know, but we are as humans, we're very vulnerable. I feel. I also feel resilient. Sorry.
No, thinking about what you just said, Jason, though, because I think you make a slightly valid, a slightly good valid point there, because there are people that can be manipulated, and they're the ones that may be in the dark when they're in their darkest times and stuff, and they're trying to hear and find that voice that's going to lead them out. But these other aspects, you know, and a lot of times outside influences say, well, oh, look, go this way. It will help you out, and they go that way, and it only takes them deeper, and then they're still stuck in that, and and so sometimes finding that right voice is also, and I think she makes a good point of like those four basic archetypes that it seems like everybody seems to resonate with. Maybe those are the core ones that are what help lead us back out of it. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm just postulating here and trying to look at all sides of this is the way my brain looks at everything. I'm go round and round in circles trying to look at it from all sides.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. That's what I like about you. You like to look at things from a lot of different perspectives. That's great. It's one thing I like about you. Not everything. But yeah, and it's it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Kenji makes a point. He says those who think they can't be manipulated are often the easiest to manipulate.
I hear you, Kenji. I was thinking kind of the same way. If there's anyone that thinks they're not very easily manipulated, they're probably, they don't realize they're being manipulated, because it's that we are very, very manipulated, easily manipulated. It puts us in a very disadvantage if you think that you're not being manipulated, or at some level, at some point. I mean, it's not that it's all nefarious, but it's there's just so much out there that is, and it's not maybe necessarily even something that's directed at us. You might hear a passing conversation and might be manipulated by that, a sound, a noise, a smell, an energy. Um, we're susceptible to all of it, and how we interpret it, like you said, is different for all of us, and that's fascinating. Yeah. But I guess I didn't get to finish. I also think we're very resilient and strong, and if we realize that, we can be guarded from it, from being manipulated. It's if we don't think we're able to be manipulated, and then that is, like Kenji said. I think I agree.
The more I look into it, the more mass manipulation is the theme of the day. Has been for a long time.
Yeah, sure. Sure. So that's why I was getting into, like, at what age would be good. I guess that would also be different for every person. In that we may have had a very, for lack of a better word, clean upbringing, clean childhood, where we're not, influenced a whole lot, and we're allowed to just grow on our own, and have a good experience, and not have excuse me, not have our psyche tainted with things, and very solid in our being, and what kind of, where you think you could kind of grow up to do anything, type of a thing, and to the point where you start realizing there's evil in the world, and there's obstacles to overcome, and that you might not want to have to, anyway, that might, anything that might cloud your judgment. And then maybe that's, starts getting into a little bit more of a difficult place to choose your archetypes. But saying that, I also think maybe, as we develop, you can also, regardless, possibly be just as maybe more well informed, and better able to choose.
The whole idea of choosing your archetypes is confusing me, that if we can choose it and we choose the wrong ones, how do we correct that?
I feel like she spoke to that just a little bit in that guy's story, the Bryant guy, that he had kind of picked out one that he thought it was. And I can't remember what she said specifically, but it seems to me that he just realized, okay, wait, maybe that's not the prominent one that is in my life. It's different than that.
The rebel one,
Maybe.
I think that's the one that he realized that it wasn't really actively helping him, and I think he switched his tactic.
Was,
I'd like to think that you could just choose to focus on a different one. Call them into your council, so to speak, and
I think that the
send the
ones
other
that
ones
you
away.
choose say more about the whole situation than anything. Like the ones that you resonate, kind of point out to yourself things that you may not have been aware of. But when you choose one and you read about it and it resonates, it just kind of tells you where you're at that moment. It doesn't tell you, it's not like those are your archetypes for your whole life or anything.
Mm-hmm.
oh, here we go. He was talking about the scholar was also a good fit for Brian because as an author of nonfiction books, much of his work required arduous, solitary research, something he quite enjoys, but he eventually determined that the scribe was less significant to him than the author and the scholar archetypes because scribes traditionally did not create books, they copied manuscripts. And after taking some time to think through the differences that characterize the two archetypes, he ruled out the scribe. So even though he kind of picked that as a possibility at the beginning, once he dug into it deeper and started asking, I'm guessing, some of the questions that she provided in the previous section, so he realized, okay, well, this one isn't as relevant to me as I thought it was upon first reading it. I imagine we can do kind of the same thing if we think that one is showing up for us. For instance, when you guys were talking before, I was just kind of looking through the different archetypes in the back of the book and just kind of like putting a little check mark by the ones that I think are, maybe that applies to me. And I can read through it more and then dig into it with some of those questions to really determine which ones are actually something I resonate with versus that I think I should be or think that might be some aspect of myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think, me personally, I would have to get the book and kind of dig in a little bit more to some of these because it's this is like a few of the other books where we've gotten into them and we thought one thing when we started and as we get into it, it's like, oh, this is deeper than what it really seems like on the outside. And this is
Mm-hmm.
one that I'm gonna, it's piqued my interest. I just want to see, go in and see myself I'm trying to find it, like an online book or something where I can do it that way without having to buy it. But because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there are, I do believe God guides me and leads me, but I also believe that He allows us to find things that help lead and guide us and give us the skills and the things that we need to actively live out our lives too. And so there's, times when I'm like, okay, I've been trying this, I've been banging my head against the wall on this, so let me see if there's something else out there that maybe could help benefit me to achieve part of what he's leading me to, in that sense, and because sometimes I know I don't have all the answers on all this, and so I'd like all the help I can get.
Yeah. I wonder if it's if it's something like if it's something like where certain archetypes contrast each other so much that they don't mix, and that that they aren't good to be considering both at the same time. And also, if it's sort of a situation where it's dependent on ourselves, and that how many we can include, like I keep thinking of it as like a, a council, sort of like a circle of archetypes, that where even if they're all in alignment, you can only you depending on how you are, you may only want be able to handle, you know 3 or 4, or maybe even go bigger, and 5 and 6, and all at the same time, have them working with you together. Or if you need to kind of focus down to just 2 or 3. But I kind of like to think of it as though we're afforded all of them to a certain degree, and it's up to us to choose, or to what we not, maybe part of it's just kind of happenstance as to what, and also our spirit, our strength of them each is, but then we can choose to build up one or the other, or multiple of them, or all of them, and then call upon them as we wish, during different moments in our life. Sort of like if you're playing a game, and you're allowed, you have in the game, you have a team, and you're allowed 5 players, but you have 30 to choose from, and you're throughout the game, you're building each of them up with their weapons, and their knowledge, and their craft, and whatever. And then when you get to a certain part where you have to, a certain moment in the game, you can switch them out and pull from ones that you feel are going to be the best suited, you know. And I think that maybe sorry to go on, but maybe the building that trust and building a relationship with each of them then becomes a important factor. In a way, maybe that's just a subconscious thing for me, feeling like if you neglect one of them, maybe they're not going to want to, they're going to be a little shy to come out, or maybe not be built up as and strong as the others. And but like, I think it would be not beneficial if we felt like we couldn't call upon any of them that we wished to, and that if we hadn't, that for some reason they wouldn't be there for us.
That would bring out the abandoned child, wouldn't it?
Right. Pull them up, and give them some love, and give them lots of love and attention.
Samantha, thanks for putting that link in the chat. I saved it on one of my forums where I save stuff, so because now I'm going to look at that later. But yeah, this book is really bringing a lot of things that I'm having to really like. Okay, how do I look at this more, and how do I understand it a little better? And because like I said, when we were talking about the innocent child, and all that, and wounded child, I'm like, I so get that, but some of these others, trying to figure out where all this fits in who I am and how I react to things is interesting. It makes me now go back to some of the other books that we've talked about, like talking about, the agreements that we had before we came down, that we signed before we came down, and then we get here and we don't remember what they are and what we're supposed to figure out is, and all that, Um, so now it's just another thing to ponder and look at and add to all this fun learning and growing.
Yeah. So many ways to look at it. And I guess, it's whatever's beneficial for the individual. I also wonder if there's kind of two sides to it as well, in the way of thinking, if, kind of coming into it. I feel like we're kind of coming into it as, these archetypes are within us, and then we can call upon them, or bring them forth to help us either understand ourselves better or help us actually move throughout life. But also the other side being, maybe is there an aspect of it to focus on on a particular archetype, and then ask it, how can we be supportive of it? How, actually physically, mentally ask, maybe in meditation, ask it, how can I support my, whatever archetype it is, the wounded child, or the neglected child, or the king, or whatever it might be, and in that way maybe build it up, become closer to it. And maybe that creates a connection to where we feel even more comfortable, more powerful in bringing it forth in our lives.
Or are we making everything more difficult than it needs to be? I know we need to wrap this up because of the time.
No,
I
we can go
appreciate
on.
you all.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Lori. Thank you. Yeah, we're good at complicating things too, but
That's what I
what
mean.
Good
archetype is
week,
that?
Catherine. See you later.
Thank you, Catherine. Thanks, guys.
Thank
I kind of like the idea I mean, that's actually the idea of asking how we can be of support. Really didn't come from myself. There was someone else in another part of my existence here in this planet that mentioned that, and it was that key phrase.
See you later, Kenji. Have a good week.
It was that key phrase that resonated with me, because it's, no, people usually, well, how can I help you? And it's kind of like hey, how you doing? Type of a thing, where you sort of just rolls off your tongue and doesn't really have any meaning, but when it's that way. But when someone says, how can I support you? Maybe it's just that I hadn't heard that before, but it resonated with me, and I think that it is a little bit deeper, and maybe, a lot of what we talk about here is how we talk to ourselves, how we or don't talk to ourselves. So I just thought that might be of interest. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it so much. Great to be here.
I was going to suggest that not only asking the question of how can I support you, but how can you support me? In what way are you showing up in my life to help me?
Yeah, that's what I assumed we were. Yeah, I
Yeah.
assumed we were already like asking,
Yeah.
hey, how can you support me? You know, get in there. You know, I'm calling you up to the big leagues. You're going in the game, and how can you, what should I do, and how can you help me? But
Yeah. What are you
possibly
trying to tell me?
getting in, yeah, possibly getting in the touch and say, hey, how can I support you? You don't seem to be helping me out here. Do I need to, um, give you a little more time or build you up somehow so that you can help me? How can
Right.
I help you help me?
Right. All right, guys, I gotta
Thanks,
jump off,
guys.
so I'm gonna wrap it up for today.
Thanks, guys. Love you.
Thanks. Love you
Everybody
all.
have a awesome, amazing week.
Love
And for
y'all.
those of you who are watching us on YouTube, give us a like, and you can find our Facebook group if you'd like to participate with us. We'd love to have you. So with that, guys, have a great, awesome, amazing week, and we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Take care.